I opened up The War of Art earlier today, this book, which is an excellent book for anyone who gets paid for their creativity, anyone who wants to professionally be creative. But because I am a copywriter and so many of my audience members are copywriters, I wanted to specifically apply one lesson from this to being a professional copywriter, which really in the context of this lesson is something that you do every single day. So the quote that I read from the chapter, A Professional, was, someone once asked Somerset Maugham if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration. I write only when inspiration strikes, he replied. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. So you can see that here on the screen now. Someone once asked Somerset Maugham if he wrote on a schedule or only when struck by inspiration. I write only when inspiration strikes, he replied. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp. So what does a professional copywriter do in the context of this? What does a professional writer do? A professional writer writes. If you are a professional copywriter, you have to write copy, right? You have to sit down. You have to schedule the time, right? Fortunately, inspiration strikes every morning at 9 o'clock. You schedule the time, you sit down and you write. Or in the case of this episode, you sit down and you create content, right? You're as a copywriter, as a professional, your job is to sit down and write. And I think that a lot of people who get into this wanting to live, like in quotes, the writer's life, are people who may think of this romantic notion of the writer who goes and like hangs out at bookstores and coffee shops and smokes cigarettes all day and drinks coffee late into the night. And yeah, that's one image of a writer. And certainly throughout history, there have been plenty of writers who've done that and been successful. But really, the writers that are most successful show up and write. I'm actually going through this book called Dilla Time about Jay Dilla, the hip hop producer. And apparently he had a similar daily schedule when he was producing just an enormous volume of hip hop beats that inspired so many great musicians. He would just get in the studio and start creating beats, get in the studio, start creating beats. It's the same thing. Like, what does a professional creative do? You create. You just have to do it. I don't always want to do it though. And you probably, like, if you get into copywriting, if you get into writing, you probably won't show up every day wanting to do it at the start of your, let's put it in air quotes, shift, right? Especially if you're a freelancer, right? If you're working from home, if you're not closely supervised, like, you're not always going to want to do this, and you're not going to have a boss looking over your shoulder saying, this is what you need to do right now. That's kind of the point of this whole lesson. You have to make a commitment. You make a commitment to publish. You make a commitment to submit your work. You make a commitment to do the thing, and then you show up and you do the work. And I know that this, like, it doesn't seem like that much of a lesson, but this is really one of the biggest differentiators between people who are out there creating a bunch of success and the people who are just remaining to be wannabes, right? Just remaining as wannabes. Because we all run into this challenge. We run into this challenge of being a professional, as defined by the War of Art. Resistance. And much of this book is about resistance. It's about facing off with resistance, overcoming resistance. And he uses resistance with a capital R. It's that feeling of like, I don't want to do this, or even all the things that happen in place of the feeling of I don't want to do this. And hey, I don't always want to do this, right? And sometimes I struggle for inspiration. I don't know what to say. Today, actually, I was struggling a little bit for inspiration. So I grabbed a couple interesting books off my shelf that I knew would have powerful lessons in them, The War of Art being one of them. And I said, okay, what's in here that is inspirational? And I used that as a starting point for this lesson. Because you have to do something to get through resistance. And if you don't know what to do, here's what you need to do. Number one, my recommendation is to journal, like to sit down, and it doesn't even have to be a journal. It can be just a blank sheet of paper that you plan to recycle afterwards, right? But just sit down and get some thoughts out of your head. Oftentimes I do that. Like, I just sit down and I get thoughts out of my head, just sit down and do something, right? Because starting is often the hardest part, but then you got to keep going. And so you want to learn, you want to practice the skill often. If you don't know what to practice as a copywriter, you can certainly practice self-promotion. You can write about interesting lessons that you've been learning, that you actually sell people on the idea and taking action on that. You could pick up affiliate programs, affiliate products. You could write about those. You could write about the latest book you bought or whatever it is, right? But find ways to practice the skill. Sit down and do it. Like, find inspiration through action. And so my call to action for you today at the end of this fairly short episode is just to ask, how are you going to use this? How will you use this, right? Challenge yourself. How am I going to use this so that for the rest of the week, I am as productive and successful as possible? I'm behaving like a professional, right? One of the things I'm sure you've noticed if you've watched a bunch of my videos, recently I've decided to put on collared shirts, and I'm just choosing to show up a little bit differently through collared shirts, right? And this is feeling a little bit more like a professional, right? How else will you work to feel more like a professional and sit down and start doing the work? Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're a copywriter, freelancer, entrepreneur, marketer. I deliver a ton of content like this on actually a daily basis. So like and subscribe here. You can also go to breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com to sign up. And if you are a copywriter, in terms of the business skills of becoming a professional copywriter, I'd strongly recommend my book, The Copywriter's Guide to Getting Paid. That's at copywritersguide.com, or you can just check the first link in the description. I'll put it there. The Copywriter's Guide to Getting Paid. It's how you run the business side or the career side of being a copywriter to be as successful as possible. I will also make sure to include a link to The War of Art by Steven Pressfield. With that, I'm Roy Furr. This is Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Every day and every episode, I'm here trying to help you as you grow your business and grow your success and yourself as a copywriter, marketer, and entrepreneur. And I will see you again in the next episode. See you soon. Bye. Thank you once again for tuning in to this daily episode of Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. Remember, check out the links with this episode for even more value. Now make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and engage in every way you can to keep this show going and growing and delivering daily value to you. I'll catch you soon for your next big breakthrough.